So we have the next to review today, I guess. So if you have any business trip or anything like that, go to Grace Hopper conference, send me an email. I will give you several days of extension. So for Monday we discussed the midterm, and if you didn't come here, you can pick up your midterm after the class. And today we are going to talk about something important called authentication. So basically we discussed the message authentication before. So message authentication, we use the hashed key to confirm a message is coming from the stated sender and it has not been changed. So basically the authenticity and the integrity has been maintained using message authentication code. But in today's class, and also in the following week, we're talking about user authentication, which is widely used. You may use this every day, and basically user authentication is different from message authentication. It allows the user to prove his or her identity to another entity or rather multiple entities. So it is the fundamental building block and the primary line of defense. So every day you log in ASU network, you put your username and password, and you log in your Twitter, everything. That is called authentication. And it is the basics for most types of access control and for user accountability. So why we're discussing user authentication in this network security class? It seems like it has nothing to do with network. That's because most of the authentications we are doing right now, we are proving our identity to a remote entity or multiple remote entities. So there is network involved. So there will be network authentication protocols in the middle. So there are basically several ways of user authentication. Before we talk about those authentication protocols, we will first discuss the basic types of user authentication. The first type of user authentication is the verifier uses something the user knows and the verifier knows to authenticate the user. So this is basically called something the user knows. So one of the most popular way of this is use text-based password. So all the websites you are using, usually they use a text-based password. Facebook, put your username, in this case, your username is an email address or phone number, and put your password. And also other websites, they all support this kind of simple authentication. So if you use Windows, if you are using Windows, you may know picture password as an alternative authentication method. So basically, you don't have to remember a text-based password. You need to select a picture from your no-code disk. Then you can do some gestures on this picture. And that gesture, the gesture can be a circle, a line, or just a tap. And that gesture, so basically you can select 3 gestures. And those gestures will be stored as the password. So when you log in your Windows, you don't have to type those text-based password. And if you use Android, Android has a pattern lock, so you can collect dots here as your password. If you use iPhone or ATM, you can put some PIN numbers or iPhone call it passcode. So basically they are the same thing. So all those something the user knows and the user has to share this secret with the verifier. those are usually or user chosen secrets. So technically, you don't have to, the user doesn't have to choose it. The user can use another password manager, and password manager can choose that something for you, which would be much longer, much more secure. But usually, user will select those secrets by themselves. And the password space for this kind of user-chosen secrets is actually big. For text-based password, if you just use 9 characters, it will be a huge password space. And it takes many, many years to crack it, in theory, if the passwords are uniformly distributed in that password space. And also, it's even bigger for the picture password. For the Windows one, the password space is much, much larger than those text-based password. Even though for iPhone, for Android, the password space is smaller, but still, in theory, it's still very big. However, the problem of all those user-chosen secret, no matter it's text-based password or picture password, the problem is users, we are the weakest link in any security system. We always choose weak passwords. So, and not only weak password, even if we choose something we think is stronger, we have the tendency to choose similar passwords. So different people, they will choose similar things. So, and another thing is in ASU, yeah.
Why was it 10 to the 18 different attachments?
Because there are how many keys do you have on the keyboard? Then you choose 9. A lot, right? So I guess that number is not maybe not the accurate number, but just give the idea that. So a lot of companies, they have some policy for you to choose password and to change your password. Like ASU, every 3 months, you get this alarming message that you have to update your ASU right password. So are you going to choose a totally new password which is secure, or you're going to change something a little bit, right? So people have been studying something like this. So I think it's 3-4 years ago, some researchers from Carolina, they studied that if I know your password history, I don't really know your plain text password history. I only know the hash of your previous passwords. Then I can guess your new password because I know that probably you are just changing a little bit of your password. You are adding a symbol there, you are changing uppercase to lowercase, something like that. Yeah.
How do you see that kind of thing in a hash, though? Isn't it completely different?
So they do not really crack the hash. They just use that to verify. So basically, it's a complicated paper. They cannot crack that. So they use that as a clue to get your password. Yeah. So we use also we can use a picture password as an example to show that user chosen secrets are not secure. So actually, this is a study we did several years ago in 2002. We had a undergraduate security class, which is 465 information assurance. So in that class, we didn't use Blackboard. Instead, we developed a web system, and the students use that web system to access the class materials. So they have to use a login system that is the same like the Microsoft picture password system. So we collected, so there were more than 50 students participated in that class. So they all needed to upload their own picture and to register their own passwords. So in that semester, we got more than 50 unique pictures and more than 86 passwords and thousands of login attempts. So we did many study on this data set, and we also collected a lot of data set. We use a service called Amazon Mechanical Turk. We implemented the system. We choose some picture and ask the workers from Amazon Mechanical Turk to choose password on those pictures. So we wanted to study how they choose password. So there are more than 700 participants, and we collected more than 10,000 picture passwords on this. So we studied the user choice patterns in those passwords. So we ask questions like, which of the following best describe what you are considering when you choose locations to perform a gesture? So the password is not only the gesture. The gesture could be a circle, could be a tab, could be a line, and also is the location. So we can see that in dataset 1, more than 70% students, they say, I was trying to find locations where some special objects are, like a face, like a car, something like that. Some saying I'm looking for something, some special shapes, like a circle, and no one said about color, but only 3% claim that I randomly choose a location to draw without thinking about the background picture. So basically, and also the data set 2, we get similar results. So this explains that most users, they tend to draw their password on some point of interest in the background picture. So the password, the user-chosen password will not be uniformly distributed in the password space. So even though the password space is huge, it doesn't mean it is necessarily secure. So then we dig into one type of picture, is picture of people. So we find that in dataset 1, almost half of the students, they uploaded 27 pictures of people, and they choose their password on those landmarks in those pictures. For example, almost 40% of the gestures are on eyes. So either the circle eye, the table eye, or collective eyes. Some eye is involved, the nose, and the passwords. 65% of the passwords has at least one gesture on the eye, and almost 19% of those subjects, when they choose a password, at least one of the gestures is on an eye. Then we got a similar result. We got also very high numbers of gestures password on nose, hands, and also other landmarks. So, and a very interesting thing we find is there are 2 students. Each of them uploaded this Starry Night figure, but this 2 different figures, by 2 different students, and this is not a picture of human. But even though the password they choose are totally different, the first guy has 3 tabs, here, 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 and the other guy also has 3 tabs. But the way the thought process they used to choose password is the same. They are trying to tap a star for 3 times. So this is what we find out. So even though they do not choose the same password, they have the tendency to choose point of interest with the same attribute. So we also look at the Microsoft advertisement. So this is the advertisement Microsoft use broadcast all over the world to promote their picture password, to say this is secure. So in their password, in their advertisement in Asia, the password they choose is they have a boy's portrait. Then there is a circle and eye, circle and eye, circle and ear. So basically, there are 3 gestures: circle and eye, circle and ear. So it uses some kind of facial landmarks there. And in South America, the advertisement they are using is line and arm, circle ahead, line and arm. So they are not using some random gestures here, even in their advertisement. in your world, the same thing. Line and arm, circle a head, and circle head or circle a face, and circle another face. So if we can use those kind of heuristics that users will always choose password using these gestures, then we can use computer vision tools to identify where is the face, where is the arm in those pictures, and we can generate dictionaries for attackers to crack those passwords. Even though we may not know those background pictures in advance, as soon as we get the picture, we can generate a dictionary for that picture. So we demonstrated this attack several years ago, and we were able to crack, I remember, half of the passwords we collected in a very, just a within 500,000 trials, actually, 500,000. But the password space was much, much bigger. That's what Microsoft claims it's so secure. So those kind of authentication methods, they are utilizing a secret shared between you, the user, and the verifier. And there is another way of authentication, basically, is something the user has in possession. For example, it could be a USB token, or it could be your ID in real life. You use your ID to, if you go to a bar, you use your ID to authenticate yourself. So something like a USB token is also widely used in real world. We have this RSA secure ID, so it has a passcode which will change every minute. And when you log in a website that supports this kind of service, you need to put your username, your password, and another passcode. So technically, this is they call this two-factor authentication because there are two secrets involved. But the second secret is from something you have in possession. And in some systems, there is no code. You just put this USB token there, and you can get authenticated. And the third type of user authentication is using something the user is. So basically some static biometric features, such as fingerprint. So iPhone, yeah.
I've got one of these two-factor authentication little things right here.
You use it for Gmail or SU?
For the Battle.net, for World of Warcraft.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. So we will discuss later. Right now, this kind of things is the most secure solution so far.
Good.
So iPhone, you can use a fingerprint, and Android, you can use this, I think they call it a face unlock. So basically, you just use your camera, and after registration, you can use your, they can just unlock you by turning on the camera. And I think they are kind of reversed. You cannot use a picture to unlock your phone. Some people try that, it doesn't work. And also, this is from Minority Report, I guess. They use iris scan to authenticate you. And also in, how do I pronounce this? GACA? Okay. So they use the DNA test to authenticate you. So what, basically, there is a tiny needle there that you put your finger there then to collect your DNA information. So all these approaches use some static biometric features, something you have to authenticate you. And usually they are kind of secure. And another way which is kind of popular in recent years is to use something the user does to authenticate users. So why this is popular? Because from usability side, this is really good. You don't have to explicitly do something to authenticate. You just do whatever you do, then as a byproduct, the verifier can authenticate you. So one way to do it is autograph or signatures, and also mouse movement. They can continuously monitor your mouse movement and build a profile of your mouse movement to say if your behavior today is consistent with your old behaviors. So this is a paper published 2-3 years ago. And also, someone recently proposed to use Kinect to capture your hand movement and use machine learning to basically all of those approaches, they use machine learning. This is kind of like anomaly-based detection we discussed in intrusion detection system. So they have to use some kind of machine learning to build a profile of you and to verify if the behavior as a system observed is consistent with your profile. So this one uses Kinect, and if you want to log into Kinect, you just use a hand to draw something. So this is also kind of like a picture password, but this is 3D, not on paper, not 2D. So this is a last type of user authentication, meaning there are 4 types, and we need to find some metrics to evaluate each authentication scheme. So several years ago, a researcher published a really, really good paper. He summarized all the benefits all existing authentication schemes can provide, and he groups them into 3 categories. And the first category is security. I list several of the features here, not all of them. If you are interested, I will post the paper so you can take a look. So the first feature is resilient to physical observation. So basically, it says that an attacker cannot impersonate a user after observing them authenticate 1 or more times. So obviously, the text-based password cannot offer this kind of benefit, because if someone shooter surfing your password, then later they can reuse that password to impersonate you. And another security feature is called resilient to targeted impersonation. So basically it says it's not possible for someone knows about you to impersonate you by exploiting the knowledge of your personal information, something like a birthday, some like names of your relatives. So this is based on the study on text-based password and also PIN numbers. So a lot of users, they use their birthday or some important days of their lives as their PIN number. And they also use those, maybe their wife's names, their children's names as part of their text-based password. So if someone knows you those personal information, then it will be easier for them to crack your password. So obviously, text-based password cannot offer this feature either. And another one is resilient to thwarted guessing. So basically, the verifier has some constraints. You can only try different passwords 5 times in an hour, something like that. And can the attacker crack your password just within 5 trials? And another one is resilient to unthwarted guessing. So basically, we give the attacker unlimited resources, and we do not limit the rate of guessing. So can those systems defeat this kind of attacks? And we can see that the text-based password, they're not really secure. They cannot offer any of those security benefits. And from usability side, there are memory-wise effortlessness. So does the user has to remember some secret? So if you are sharing a secret with a verifier, probably you have to remember that. But there are tools like password managers can help you remember that. But if you are using secure ID, like the RSA secure ID, the USB token, technically you don't have to remember anything, even though they are using it as a two-factor authentication. If you are only using that as one-factor authentication, you don't have to remember anything. Every time you want to log in, you just take out your USB token and see the current password. And scalable for users. This is interesting too, because usually, how many accounts do you have in the internet? I don't know, 100, 200 accounts, and you may have a different username or password for each account. But probably you are not doing that. You are using your username, which is your email address, and you are using your password or change the password a little bit for different websites. So, which means text-based password is not really scalable. You cannot remember 100 different passwords for each of the websites. But if you are using something like secure ID, it is scalable because you don't have to remember. And another feature is called infrequent errors. So basically, it says how often a legit user will be rejected because he made a typo or something. And text password, it happens a lot. And some metrics is called deployability. This describes how hard is it for the verifiers to deploy this kind of authentication scheme. And the features they are considering is first is cost. Is it very expensive? So text-based password is very, very cheap. So the verifiers, they do not really need to do anything special. They just store your password or store your encrypted password or hash the password. But if you are using a USB token, which means either the verifier or the user has to pay for that token, and it's not cheap. And if the verifier is using some biometric, like a fingerprint or iris to authenticate you, which means they need some special device to read your fingerprint or iris, and those can also be expensive. And and another feature they talked about is if this authentication mechanism is server compatible. Basically, it doesn't require any, they do not need to change their existing authentication infrastructures. They do not need to add any physical things. So we will look at this at a very high level. So there are other features they proposed. So this is a text-based password, and this is a security part. So we can say that the text-based password is not offering many security features actually. So even though some of the security features might be more important than others, but they are just offering like 4 security features out of 10. But the benefit of the text password is really deployability. It's really easy for the verifier to deploy that. That's why even this has been proposed. The text-based password has been proposed for more than 50 years. It has been there at the very beginning of a computer system. As sure as they come up with the idea of multi-user operating system, they had the username and password. It has been there for 5 decades, and we are still using them, but not because they are secure, not because they are easy to use, but only because it's easy for the verifiers to deploy those text-based passwords. And for the biometric authentication schemes, including fingerprint, iris, or voice, the usability is really good because the user doesn't have to do anything special. They don't have to remember anything. They just be themselves and they can be authenticated. But surprisingly, it's not that secure. So every time you watch a sci-fi movie, you see a very cool authentication, and you think this is really secure. It's not really true. It's not that secure. It's very easy to attack. The reason they are there is because the usability is good, and it looks cool in movie. And it's hard for them to be deployed. Usually you need some special device to do something like this. And the hardware tokens, they are the most secure way so far to secure your account. So if you are using that token to protect your games, that's good. But why are you not using that for your bank account?
That's why it's my bank account a lot more often.
Yes. Okay. So they are not very easy to deploy, but usually there are many ways to make them kind of compatible with text-based password, and the usability is not that bad. So this is actually the most secure way to do authentication right now, but it can be kind of expensive. So in this class, we talked about the basic categories of authentication. And in the next class, we're going to talk about authentication protocols. And usually authentication protocols, they are based on something the user knows. So there is a secret shared between a user and the verifier. But that secret is not a password. Usually it's a key. So users are freed from remembering that his password, but the key has to be stored somewhere secure. So going from there, we're going to talk about very sophisticated protocols like Kerberos, which ASU also use. Yeah, so this is for today. So if you didn't came here Monday, you can pick up your midterm. What?
The guy's trying for authentication.
What's that?